Loyal day, everyone, to all of our viewers around the world. Welcome to this live digital Gava session that we have going on at the moment. I'm coming live to you from Auckland, New Zealand. Another day, another dollar here in
Mhm.
Aotearoa. Everything is going well. It's getting a little bit colder, and so far it's still a beautiful day. Getting darker earlier here in this side of the world, but everything is going well from my side. We are coming live to you from YouTube, Facebook, Patreon, and Instagram. So yeah, you can see us on those platforms. Dua, how you doing, man?
Hey, doing good. It's another relatively cool evening here in Nevada. It's a great day to have a kava session here
Yes,
on
sir.
the Polynesian Eyes podcast. And we may have some guests joining on later
Mm,
on this podcast. But with that being said, we're going to jump into a couple topics, Mr.
let's go.
Aotearoa,
Let's
that
go.
I thought were interesting. First one,
Mm-hmm.
and let me pull out. Um, Let me share this. This one is, I think, relevant because it's tied to where you are. And as you remember, Mr. Aotearoa, we had Honorable Minister Shane Jones join us
Yes.
on the
Yeah.
podcast. Jeez, it feels like it's been a few weeks now.
Mhm.
Um, And one of the questions you asked him about was energy, the cost of energy, and that's something that's a big deal to the voters, the people over there in New Zealand. Saw this headline, made me think of you guys, and it's saying Waddy's New Zealand confirmed it would close its Auckland, Christchurch, and Dunedin processing plants, as well as its frozen vegetables packing lines in Hastings.
Mm. Mm.
That's a big
Yeah, that's
deal.
an
And it comes down
yeah.
to what you asked him. It was about energy, right? It says here
Yep.
gas up 300%. Power doubled. Why Waddy says local manufacturing no longer works. What's kind of your reaction to this, Mr. Aotearoa, considering the economy, the environment over there? And I can see why your coworkers and peers, this is the number one topic.
Yep. Yep. Well, that is the reflection of actually what's going on in the New Zealand at the moment. Energy costs, cost of living is a big deal. This is not the only manufacturing company that's closed down. I believe there was one last year.
Mm,
It was like a paper mill. Um, uh, Factory that also shut down due to energy costs. It wasn't, you know, people don't run business because running a business is very difficult. People don't do the hard work if it's not going to make sense regarding profit they're going to get from it, you know. So, these things are achievable, and I believe what Minister Shane Jones and the New Zealand First want to do, which is to break up. There's four utility companies in New Zealand to break them up to make it more competitive, because the interesting thing is apparently the New Zealand government owns a majority of all of those four utilities, but um, they are letting it happen because they receive money, into the government, so that helps them to spend on other things. So I do believe, that's why New Zealand First has that policy that they are going to break them up because they can, as they're the majority owners of those companies, utility companies. So, this is just a trickling down effect to businesses. And, those kind of work, those manufacturing jobs are critical, as we found that out in 2020, especially the pandemic. The countries that are able to have more, are big producers of their own goods are um, much more able to come out on the other end, especially with regarding pandemics. And a lot of countries are serving their own self-interest, and it's not a global economy like we have with shipping and sharing our goods in the free market. So I hope, you know things do change, and New Zealand First has a, the more support they have, the more ability they'll be able to make these big changes. But yeah, energy and I think to being the energy um, market that drives every little thing. Like, you know, so if solar, like for example, I think everyone knows with the Iran war right now and cost of gas, and people are worrying about the ability to have enough energy. People don't care about renewable energy when this was going on. Renewable energy is talked about when we have a uh, let's just say when we have a abundance of oil that we have as
Mhm.
we can talk about the convenient stuff of the renewable energy. But it's to me it sounds like oil gas is still king in the world right now. But that's my thoughts there. I don't know if you had anything else.
Yeah, just a couple of things to add there. Obviously, I love renewable energy when
Mm,
it's used for the right reason, for the right situation, right? It's like we say, the right tool for the job makes the job easy. But if you bring the wrong tool to the job, and it makes your work a lot harder.
mm,
A lot of things that I think are interesting here is Waddies is a huge brand. When
big, yeah,
that's kind of like that's like a staple. We always knew the Waddies. I always remember the ketchup or the tomato sauce. I also remember the spaghetti, right?
yeah,
The spaghetti cans. Like,
yeah.
these are name brands. These are companies that have been there for forever. And as we are learning now, manufacturing is becoming very clear. It is national security. It is good jobs. It is
Mm,
stability. It is controlling your future. And I think, like you were mentioning, Mussy, that the pandemic of COVID woke everybody up, right? Because you remember there were some countries that were producing more of the PPE. They
yeah,
wouldn't share until their needs were met first. Then there
correct.
was medicine. So if if New Zealand loses this manufacturing capability, then what?
You,
Right?
you
They're going to
think
have to ship the raw
yes,
material overseas just to buy it back. And you think about that,
correct.
that's not cheap, right?
No.
And this is something that people forget. And I think we've shown this graph before, Mussy, is this one right here. If you remember, no such thing as a
Mm,
low energy rich country, right?
yes, I do remember. Yeah,
If and this is the same thing. This is why energy drives wealth or prosperity, right?
mm,
Because you have local manufacturing. You can drive energy, drives cost, cheaper
yes.
energy, cheaper goods and services, right?
Hmm.
And as you can see here, there's no such thing as low energy rich country. And we all know, if energy prices go up, what does that mean? You have less energy, right?
Yeah,
Because that's why the demand goes up, because there's less supply. And that's why,
yeah.
what Uncle Donald's done is he's done the opposite. He's like, we're gonna drill, baby, drill. We're gonna provide energy so
Mm,
that we are energy independent. And that's something that I think New Zealand has to figure that out. They
yeah,
can't just assume, oh, whoever's always going to do our manufacturing. No, you got to be very
correct.
strategic. You have to pick and choose. This is why, it's really changed the way I've thought about tariffs.
Mm,
Tariffs, because we're taught in school, right? Tariffs are a bad thing, free trade. Dun, 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 dun. Yes, if everyone's playing by the same rules and if everyone has aligned interests. But the
yeah.
reality is, we're a bunch of different countries who have different interests. And when things don't go well, everyone is primarily worried about their interests. That's what we saw, right? When medicine became a shortage in COVID, the people who were manufacturing medicine, they said, wait, we're going to take care of ourselves first before we give you medicine, right?
Yeah.
And you can cry and say, no, but I'm your customer. When people start dying and economic productivity is impacted, people start taking care of themselves. And so that's something that I think is really important. Um, And then look at the jobs that are going to be lost on top of that.
I
And
know. Yeah.
these are high paying. That's the one thing I learned when I was in China. I was impressed with China's manufacturing capabilities,
Mm,
but then I also saw why China has become wealthy, because they were building things, manufacturing things, and selling them. And these are skills that are developed and
yes, over
harnessed
time.
over
Yes.
time. And I look back, because I, like you mentioned, I come from the energy sector. I've built power lines, I've built substations, I've built solar battery storage. I'm now building thermal, which is natural gas combustion turbines, power generation. And I look through all the Midwest, middle
Mm,
America, and I saw all, like, I couldn't picture what a small town that was like deteriorating would look like when it was thriving. But when
mm,
I went to China, I
yeah.
realized this is what middle of America looked like, where there was
Yes.
just manufacturing, products being produced and moved, and new communities. One of the cities, because I guess in China they have like a tier one, tier two, tier three. Beijing and all the big cities are tier one. I was in a tier three city, 10 million people, right?
Wow.
Like manufacturing all over. And in that 10 million people city, it was only like 11 years old, and 10 million people were living there, all built around manufacturing, power lines, energy. So New
Mm,
Zealand's got to figure this out. This is where, the more, when we had conversations with Minister
Shane
Shane
Jones. Mm,
Jones, and we were talking about, New Zealand. When we grew up in Tonga, New Zealand was like this powerhouse of an economy. We were looking to it, and now New Zealand has been kind of like, even New Zealanders are leaving New Zealand to go to Australia. New
mm,
Zealand is kind of viewed now, as much as they like to look down on Tonga, Samoa, and everywhere else. There's, like, people in Tonga, Samoa are like, why go to New Zealand when I can go to Australia? Right? Like,
mm,
there's a shift in the perspective, but I think it's because of poor thinking, not doing what's right for the New Zealand voter and people, and really what they did in America. But America has a larger economy and more productivity to weather that storm. New Zealand needs to be very careful, in my opinion. That's kind of my thoughts there, Mr.
yeah.
Aotearoa.
Well, and to me, the biggest reflection on just what New Zealand is, they're spending the money on the wrong areas. Social welfare has blown up since those years, and social welfare is not a productive sector to try to encourage or
No,
incentivize. And
it's
that
just a
that
consumer.
has
It doesn't
yes,
produce.
yes, and it's killed innovation. It's killed to strengthen your economy. Man, I would say the Tongan paanga is just as good as the New Zealand dollar at the moment.
Yeah.
Like that's how
No, yeah.
that's how much far off New Zealand has fallen. You know, so it's unfortunate, but if New Zealand doesn't get its act together and especially start trimming some of the social welfare money they're spending on, and put it on other areas like manufacturing and making energy cheaper,
Cheaper.
meaning building more utilities, then we got to invest in those infrastructure because I think you're absolutely right. Energy, it runs everything, and New Zealand thinks it tends to try to get picky, but like just get the oil, do some exploration of oil and gas, thermal energy in Rotorua with the it's known as the gas and stuff kind of coming out, the heat pools and stuff. Those things we can definitely build on. The thing is in order to have that funds, need to cut we need to cut our New Zealand's social welfare spend. You know, that's really killing the progress of Aotearoa.
Here's a comment here, Mussy, that I think we should just consider here, and this by Debo's eye. He or she says it's weird how all the Western countries are going to crap, which is a fair observation,
Fair observation.
right?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts behind that? What is driving this?
Well, see, and this is to me the only Western country that's kind of standing that can it's actually making at least a push against going downhill is the US of A. because of
Hmm.
what Trump has been doing since 2016. Man, but you look at Europe, especially Europe, we found out a lot about their military capability. They have spent zero on their defense, and the UK can't even. I think I shared it with you too off live. They had six Navy ships that were going to send to the to the Strait of Hormuz to kind of observe and stuff. And five of them came back, and only one is out there. And they had to cut a deal with Germany to use one of their boats to go and send out
So
because they
shame.
don't even, yeah, because they don't even have money to spend on their military. But you know what they prioritize is social welfare, and it's the same trending that New Zealand's heading on. The amount of money they spend on the social welfare, that it's really killing the progress on development of our country and defense. Because at the end of the day, why spend money on social welfare if you don't even can't spend on defense, and defense is your first line of protection from external threats. So yeah. Hey, good point, Debo.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And Debo kind of mentions here multiculturalism, and we like diversity. We like the
Mm,
but when that becomes the number one priority, then it seems to be out of whack, right? You got to take care of the human needs. You need air, you need water, you need food, you need shelter, energy,
energy.
you need all
Mm,
those things. Then you can add some other stuff, but don't put that right at the top, right? And to me, the interesting thing here is I saw this when I went to Europe myself, and I went to the Netherlands, I went to Brussels, I went to France, went to England, went
mm.
to Germany, and one of the things that stuck out to me was things don't open till like 9 or 10. Things close at like 5 or 6,
They work
and then
shorter compared to American
works. Yeah,
standards, huh?
and then they're on holiday, right? Like I went and visited a German kid that we met in Samoa while we
Mm,
were visiting in Samoa, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm taking holiday for like 3 months."
mm,
And I was like, dude, like in America, it's like you just hope for 2 weeks. Then you look at all their welfare spending and all these other things, and I'm like, how are you able to do these things? And then, like you mentioned, Masi, I saw this. It's because the American taxpayer is getting waxed, right? The American taxpayer, because when you look at that, how much productivity comes out of the average American taxpayer, and the work hours and everything, and the productivity that comes out, and the economic growth and engine that is, and then you look at how the United States, who now we're learning, we thought NATO was a bunch of
mm.
countries. Now we know NATO was just
The
America,
American,
right? Like
the
that, there was
American
no different. Like,
military.
yeah, that was it, right? There was America. That was it. You remove America, what they were supposed to spend 2% of their GDP. They didn't even do that, you know,
Mm,
and
mm.
and then you have countries like Spain.
Yeah, and I think Trump tried to ask to up it up to 5% because he knows the military capability has been so lagging for the Europes. They need to up it up to 5% to catch up, and they can't even do that because a lot of, like, what we mentioned earlier, that money has been already allocated to in their budgets, their ministry
Yeah,
budget, to the welfare, and they're scared to do it because they've made the people drinking the
yeah,
Kool-Aid for so
the
long,
good
and they're gonna
stuff,
you're
the
gonna get the
gravy.
you're gonna get the withdrawals, and the governments don't wanna do that because
Yeah,
they know election is every 3, 5 years or whatever. So yeah.
yeah, and they're gonna, there has to be a rude awakening. I don't know how that's gonna look, especially now that they had open borders. So you're bringing in people. We want to bring in people, but you want to bring
Yes.
contributors, not
Yes.
you want to bring contributors, and now they're basically funding their demise. And this is a familiar face, Mr.
Hey, water
Atera, Water
bears,
Bears.
water bears,
Yes,
welcome to all one.
Malo, official PR rep of
Yes,
the
sir.
Polynesianized live digital kava sessions. He says New Zealand is falling because God is disappearing out of the picture. atheists taking over?
I
That's
think
that's
Ma
a that's a
yeah,
fair question or comment there. What are your thoughts?
yeah. No, that's what Maui Tekelangi kind of mentioned to Shane Jones, and Shane Jones kind of shared his thoughts there regarding that. But at the moment, water bears, I think atheist is the dominant part of New Zealand's makeup of you know believers or non-believers in religion. So I'm not surprised because there is probably some correlation on that. You know, because of that, they tend to think of social welfare to the person wants needs right now instead of building infrastructure and let the person build the wealth themselves. Because if you don't have the money to build on infrastructure, then people will tend to rely on the government, and then the government becomes their god. And so kind of say so. Water bears, maybe they if you phrase the question when they do the stats to say who do they believe, the god of the universe or the god of the New Zealand government, they'll probably pick the god of New Zealand government as their believers. Then we can change that number, but that's unfortunate. But you're right, water bears. Tua, do you have any thoughts on water bears question?
No, 100%. And I agree with you, Mr. Atearoa. We cannot help but look up or worship or look to something that's higher than us, right?
Mm,
To provide. Because what you're saying, people say, "Oh, I'm not religious. I don't believe in God." But then they turn to the government for what? To give them health, to give them money, to
give them
give them all
housing.
the things that they
Give them
need.
housing. Yep.
Exactly. So basically, they do believe in God. They just prefer a God that they can say they vote for or have an interaction with. So 100%, I think that plays a big role. And like when you have a a character built on faith, you're willing to sacrifice the short term for the long term a little bit more. You're more willing to maybe hold back your self interest for someone else's benefit, which in many ways that is economic activity, right?
Mm,
That's the economics, despite the fact that people think, oh, it's a temporal thing. Yes, it is, but it is a spiritual thing as well, where I'm willing to act in faith, to start a business, to sacrifice blood, sweat, tears, financial stability in the hope or the faith that there's something better on the other side. Some
yeah.
people will just say, "Oh, that's normal business," or you can say, "Actually, that is the manifestation of a spiritual characteristic, so to speak." So
Mm.
appreciate that, Water Bears and
Malo water
Malo,
bears.
Water Bears
Hey,
and Malo
malo,
Kava.
malo.
Appreciate it. Really appreciate the digital Kava bag there, Malo.
Yeah.
Here's a couple comments coming from Facebook.
Mm.
Ukuidai says the global reset is amongst
Ooh,
us. I
ooh.
think that's a fair observation, Mr. Atero, because the
One
mask is being
particular,
peeled back.
one particular tour. Are you thinking is the reset everything, or is there specific?
Everything. I
Mm,
think it's everything because you see what Donald Trump is doing. He's ripping the false illusion
mm,
of globalism, right? And that we can just outsource everything. It's about cheap products, right? It's about a quote unquote free trade, but it's not really free trade, right? It's about we don't need to worry about our self-defense. We don't need to worry about military spend. That's only for barbarians. We have
mm,
evolved as human beings, forgetting that when the crap hits the fan, everyone becomes a Neanderthal, right? Everybody becomes smash, take your stuff. Like this is a reset, like spiritually, right? I think in the US, I don't know about Europe, but in the US, there's an increase in faith and the desire to express faith and in God. There's a rejection of globalism and a lot of other ideas that sound good. And I would even say that some of it is good, but just in the wrong priority, right?
mm,
Like sometimes it's not about just doing the right thing. It's doing the right thing at the right time, at the right place. And sometimes people think like just because it sounds right or sounds good, no, it's about doing the right thing at the right place at the right time. And I think it's across the board. We're seeing it, right? So that's kind of my thoughts there, Mr.
Yeah,
Atero.
yeah. No, good point by what Ukudai. I would the reset because what comes to my mind is the tariffs that's
Mm,
currently happening at the moment because that you can say that's a reset because it was pretty much like you were saying, everyone expects America to do free trade, free market for everything, but those other countries, they were doing tariffs even way before because they know they were protecting their goods and their manufacturers and their producers of goods so they can export it. But when things to come that might hurt their producers, if things came cheaper, they would put a tariff on it. So tariff, especially in the US context, is changing, is almost causing a whole global reset. You can look at Canada. Canada is rethinking of doing things differently. And, this to me, this reset can only endure. And I feel like it's a good reset personally because it will make people it will make people less reliable or dependent on the US for everything, right? For everything while the Americans would work to death pretty much um, trying to pay for everything. And you know tariff is, it's been to me, it's a good thing because like what you said, if those other countries don't have tariffs and then we don't have tariffs, then it's a truly a free market for everybody. But
exactly.
but the problem is when we do the free market and then other countries don't do it, we need to not do that. We need to protect our interests and have tariffs just like other countries were doing way before the US implemented the tariff. So that is causing a global reset moving forward. And in order for this to be endured, we got to make sure that especially the U.S. It's been proven that elections were not fair and were not proper in 2020. So, I know there's been a bill with the Save America's Act at the moment that requires ID and passport to prove citizenship before voting. That's been kind of held up. And if we don't get some more reassurance, especially for the U.S. public, because it did take a drop in the trust of the public in our elections. If that doesn't get sorted, you know you're still allowing ways for the let's just say the people who want power to make it happen regarding cheating the election because it has been done before, and we're leaving the door open to be done again if we don't strengthen the election process with the law. So that's kind of my thing there. In order to make this reset longer, or we'll just kind of get the people who want everything to be how it was before, and cause chaos. And when America does not become the superpower, the world becomes a very dark place. So that's kind of my thoughts there with the global reset, because I think it is
Yeah,
a good thing. What you said, the
yeah.
global reset.
The right kind of reset, right? Because there was a
Yeah.
reset happening, taking advantage of America. America, I think it made sense after World War II, the way the trade deals were structured, because America was the only economy that could rebuild the world, right? It made sense like, hey, Japan, you need to recover. We'll buy your cars. We're already good with our cars. Just our market's big enough for our manufacturing to handle it. But we'll buy your
But
cars. But that's changed now.
yeah,
Japan's a huge economy now.
yeah.
You know,
Well, and
same thing with
yeah.
Europe.
Yeah, no, and just to say, I don't mind. We did all of that, but what did we get in return? Like what Trump says, we went to Iraq. He didn't agree with it, but because we went to Iraq, he said I would have taken the oil. We have to get something in return, because if you think about it, Europe hasn't really done anything since we helped literally build those countries and that continent after World War II. Same thing with Japan. And what do we have? We have Toyota, the number one car making in
In the
America.
world. And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's and you're talking about America being what the founding members of Ford, GMC, Chevy, you know. So it's unfortunate, and I mean, those are the things that needs to happen. That if we build those countries, we should have had some clauses to actually get something in return, because there are
That's fair,
wealthier now.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's an investment, and then hey, it's nothing personal. I love Japan. That's one I really want to go to Japan. I love
Mm,
Japan as a culture. This has nothing to do with anything personal. This is just what's fair, what's right, considering the return on investment. And going back to your comment on the voting and the ID, see, this is what we're talking about. Voting's important, right? But do it in the right order. Make sure you're a citizen, make sure you have valid identification. That is a higher priority before voting, because
mm,
and people forget, they just jump straight to the voting. It's like, no, 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 no. You vote because of your citizenship, because
yes.
you have partaken of the social contract as like members in a club, right? It's like
Hmm.
you would never have, if we had a club and then we just let non-member people who come in and vote in the, it was like, no, you don't come and decide what we say in our club. Neither
Mm.
should I expect to go to another club that I'm not a part of and vote there. No,
Or
it's common sense,
yeah.
but people get all excited about, well, voting is the most important civil responsibility. Yes, if you're an American and if you're in New Zealand, the laws dictate what makes it valid for you to vote. You need to meet that requirement first before you talk about the voting.
No, I was gonna say, or have the person who just come to the club and says, "Well, I'm not here to vote, but I'm here on behalf of somebody who wants to vote, and I'm casting their vote for them."
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed that your club has sodas, and I want you to buy the most expensive soda and give it to me. That's what I'm voting for, but I'm not going to pay my dues.
Mm,
I'm not going to follow the rules. You see, like a lot of this stuff really doesn't make sense. Here's
yeah.
another comment here, Mr. Atero, from
Okay.
Nicolao Mayava. You want to read that out real quick?
Yeah. So is it what Dwayne Leo is a
Mm-hmm.
man who should bring on your podcast. He's the head of the PSA union in New Zealand. Very intuitive and detailed on the social, economic, and politics of New Zealand. Okay, interesting.
I think we should we'll take that, we'll note that down, Dwayne. And what's PSA? Is that like a union
That is the Public Service
association or something?
Association, I believe. Nico Laumayava, yeah, let us know if
Yeah.
that's correct. Public Service Association. So I
Yeah.
think it is a union. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, maybe we'll make a note. Maybe we can reach out to him in the future to
yeah,
join us, because I
uh,
mean, it's a
yeah.
big
I mean,
election coming up this year, right? It's a big election
yes,
coming up
sir. November
for
7th.
November 7th. So
Yeah,
it seems to be good timing. And I really
yeah,
think, as Polynesians, especially in New Zealand, I mean, Auckland being the crown jewel of largest, concentration of not just Polynesians, but the diversity of the different clans of Polynesians and Pacific Islanders. Um, that's an important voice in New Zealand politics, and so that may be
yeah,
worthwhile. He says, "Yeah,
uh,
spot on." So that's
yeah,
probably what it is, Mr.
yeah,
Atera, and
Ni-
we'll take a
yeah.
look into it, Nico.
Yeah, and Nico, just to accelerate the process, if you have a good contact for that person, Dwayne Leo, yeah, please let us know, because it just makes our work easier to try to reach out.
Absolutely. And I want to pull this one out. Anything else, Mr. Atero, on that? There's one more thing I think that is worthwhile to kind of discuss, since we're talking about that before we go to the rugby content here. Anything else, Masi?
Mm, no, just yeah, it's very interesting times, and another big year for Aotearoa to moving for the future, because very the economy hasn't been doing well, but the option we have is, if we go back to the previous government, it's gonna make things even worse. It's almost like choosing the worst government to make it more even worse, or just try to get something now because we've kind of came out of the rabbit hole that we were during uh, Jacinda's times.
Anti
He's
Jacinda. And then, oh, did you want to read that? I was just popping it up
Yes.
for
No, he just
viewers.
said he just told me recently 24,000 recently migrated from New Zealand to Australia. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
No,
crazy.
and this is why it's crazy, right? Because when you look at the quality of life that New Zealand offered, combined with the economic opportunity,
Mm,
New Zealand can be a powerhouse. You know what I mean? It has great um, land. It has great features. I mean, it has the quality of the agriculture and also the livestock. You know what I mean? And
mm,
there's just so many things going for it. But if you don't have energy, you go backwards. And I think New Zealand's forgotten that, and they need to come back to that. I think when we spoke with Minister um, Shane Jones, they were looking at shutting down, or if not already shut down, the last refinery
yeah, the
in
point
New
makes
Zealand,
yeah,
right?
something yeah. Yeah.
So basically, you're going to be like Tonga right now, and we love Tonga, but Tonga has no refining capacity. So we're 100% dependent on refineries and oil from outside,
Yep.
and that is a challenge for Tonga's capacity to develop economically, right? Is because of
Yep.
that energy. Energy is where everything starts from. You don't have anything in the industrial age if you don't have energy. That's really
Mm,
what it boils down to. And so I can't I kind of feel bad because I feel like New Zealand is just going backwards and backwards and backwards. And because it is a smaller economy than the United States, it's the bad effects of that poor energy policy is showing itself much quicker. And that's why tens of thousands of people have are leaving beautiful New Zealand, kind of like people in Hawaii, right? Priced out of paradise.
yep. Moving to the
I'm
mainland. Yep.
I'm sure they would love to stay in New Zealand, especially if that's where they've grown up, that's where all their family is. But you know, just like everybody else, you got to go where the opportunity goes. I spent a career working and going where the opportunity goes. It's not fun because you got to pack up, you got to move. I've worked all across the United States chasing opportunity, and I understand why you have to do it, but it's not fun, right?
Mm,
And just kind of capping this, coming bringing this together. I know this is more of a foreign relations, but Winston Peters,
ooh.
like you said, Masi, you said if there was a guy who could come in and resolve that Cook Islands situation, was Winston. And as it says here, China out, New Zealand back as new deal struck with Cook Islands. New Zealand's
Mm,
tense political standoff with its realm country, Cook Islands, is over. The two countries have signed a defense and security declaration, ensuring New Zealand gets consulted in a quote unquote timely and transparent, right, way,
mm.
and can veto anything it feels is a threat to its security or
Security.
that of the realm. Any thoughts on that, Mr. Ateroa?
Yeah, because Winston Peters, as the ministry, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he put a pause on like $13 million to go to the Cook Islands because the Cook Islands they call it the realm country of New Zealand or a territory of New Zealand. So, it took some time, but he did share that experience matters, and that's what he
Yes.
brings, and he was able to agree with Cook Islands, and now they're back on a good relationship. And just depending on where you stand, if I was New Zealand, I would have done the same thing. Hold, put a pause and hold button on any assistance to them until we come to an agreement, and then looks like the assistance will be start flowing to the Cook Islands, Lalo Tonga from Aotearoa with this agreement. So Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there. What's your thoughts when you saw this rekindled
Yeah, I mean,
relationship?
this is how you do it. You play ball. You don't roll over. You don't try to be cute. I mean,
Mm,
this was a big task. China has a bigger checkbook than New Zealand,
yep.
right? China has a bigger military, has a bigger everything. But the one thing that you have to have is you cannot flinch, right? This is why you have to hold the line, and you have to just say, no, this is what we believe, this is what we stand for, and you have to play the game. China was playing the checkbook game,
Yep.
right? New Zealand says, okay, we might not have a big enough checkbook, but our checkbook has an impact,
Mm,
right? And use that as leverage, bring them to the table, and then say, hey, really? You're going to sell out to me? I've been with you from the beginning. Leverage the relationship, right? To be like, hey, come on, man, what are you thinking?
yep.
Bring it together. You need a strong leader, strong leadership to really
Yep.
kind of navigate the bumpy waters. And he did it. And here's any thoughts there before I change
Yeah.
to this other one?
Ye Yeah, and another thing I like about the New Zealand first, Winston Peters, he's mentioned it many times when dealing with, you know, in Polynesia or with the Pacific. He calls them our cousins. This is our
Yeah.
family, you know. So obviously he's a believer of the one Polynesian nation because he understands, this is probably a relative that's kind of acting out a little bit because maybe past governments they weren't treated well, but now he's back, took some time, a little discipline, a little patience, and some experience, and it's good to rekindle that Polynesian
Relationship. Yeah.
relationship. So he's mentioned it many times and multiple occasions, saying that this is our backyard, this is our relative, this is our cousins. So
Yeah.
interesting.
100%. And then the last one, it's Foreign Minister Winston Peters heads to Washington to meet U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And then look at the headline: Is New Zealand backing a bully? Concerns over Peters' visit to Trump's U.S. What were they saying that when China was walking around elbowing all of the Pacific and the Cook Islands? Right? Like, I mean, this is
It's
why, like,
so
it's
funny.
kind of silly.
Very silly. And that's the kind of mainstream media that's kind of getting fed here in Aotearoa. And that's inaccurate because one, Winston Peters even said he was invited by Secretary of State Marco Rubio to come over to discuss, um, you know, oil resilience, and he did mention that this meeting, if New Zealand were to need more oil and gas, that the U.S. will be able to supply New Zealand with it. Because guess what, New Zealand, you can't buy oil from China, right? I know that's where we sell our butter and dairy stuff, but guess what? China does not have any oil and gas that they can sell. So it's just it's this lack of understanding, especially these media folks that are. I feel like the the New Zealand Herald is like the little cousin of the ABC and CNN. They just take certain snippets of those and then they just re regurgitate that to the New Zealand public to kind of feed off because it's the same talking points that they use from especially those mainstream medias in the ABC, CBS, and all of that from the US CNN. They just get that and then throw it here in the New Zealand public to make everything that's bad looking to Trump, especially when he's resetting. It's always those that want to reset the global um, state of the economy around the world. So that's kind of my thoughts there from what I've kind of followed up regarding this exchange. Dua,
Yeah,
unless
and
you have
it's just
anything.
kind of silly that they say backing a bully when you have China in your backyard buying off your friends, right? Like, and then if you don't pay, they try to take over. Like, who's the bully then? And also, how are you going to stop China from doing that? Is New Zealand Herald going to take out their checkbook
Well,
and pay hundreds of millions of dollars?
I can tell you that the New Zealand military, it's probably worse off than the UK military. So if China was gonna come, you know what they're gonna do? Writing words and putting articles out is not gonna chase the enemy away. So I'm assuming
Plus,
you guys gonna call America for
yeah,
military assistance.
exactly. Because maybe the one good ship that New Zealand had, they sunk it in Samoa, right? On a
A
DEI
brand new
project.
it was a brand new ship and it sunk. What an embarrassment. Stick maybe that's why I say stick to humanitarian aid until New Zealand can spend real money on what military looks like.
Hey, spend that money and get cheaper energy. I mean, at the end of the day, I think
Yep.
what this comes down to, we'll close this out, is I think, discussions with Shane Jones, hearing your perspective and your experience in person, participation with New Zealand first. I think I'm aligned with you. I'm not a New Zealand voter, but if I was in New Zealand, I would definitely give this a good look and just say, "Hey, look, man, what happened here?" Because that's what America did with
Mm,
Donald Trump,
mm,
right? Because now, even I mean, there's a lot of Republicans who don't like Donald Trump. Obviously, the Democrats don't like him, but the American voter said, "Who is looking out for me? Who's going
yep,
to help me?" Right?
yep,
And I think from the discussions we've had and what we can see online, if the New Zealand voter can just ask themselves, who is looking out for me? Who's going to help me get better opportunity financially, the
mm,
economy, and also build the right relationships to provide stability in the region? Whether we like it or not, New Zealand is an important player. New Zealand and Australia are the important players in that region. But I think it's safe to say we're big fans of Winston,
mm,
Shane Woods, and the New Zealand First Party, and hope they continue to progress and at least give an opportunity for the New Zealand voter to understand their vision, what they want to bring to the table, and then like Shane Wood said, then let the voters vote, and whatever they
yep,
decide, and you go from there.
yep, absolutely.
Awesome. See here. With that being said, we're going to go to the next segment, and we have a handful of videos here of Shane Jones or Eddie Jones, sorry. And I mean, I got a bunch of them. I don't even know if we'll get to all of them in the time, but we'll just start from the bottom and work our way up
Okay.
with it.
Pivoting to sports now, huh? Little
Yes,
sports.
little rugby. The first one kind of makes sense. It starts with, um, let me share this instead. Let's bring this up.
Where's he at the moment? Is he
He
still with
he was
Japan?
he
The
left
national team?
Japan. He went to England. Went to Australia. Went to England. Then I think maybe back to Japan. And then I
Okay.
don't know if he's still there or not. I mean, he's definitely not your stereotypical person um, in rugby. He's very creative. He thinks outside of the box. Um,
Oh, looks
but
like he's not coaching anymore. Looks like he was in so he was in Japan from 2023. Oh no, looks like he is. Oh,
yeah,
reappointed. Okay. Yeah.
last
He's
yeah,
back
because
in
he
Japan.
left Japan. He went to
You're
like
right.
England, Australia, maybe
Yeah.
one other place, and then he came back to Japan.
Yeah.
But
That's where he's
here's
at the moment. Yeah.
yeah, here is talking about, is World Rugby doing enough for Fiji and those countries, Tonga and Samoa? So let's listen in real quick there.
Now,
Mm.
Moana's gone. What does rugby owe the Pacific? Is it sentiment or is it a business model? Eddie
Mm.
Jones.
Well, I think it's got to offer it a chance. And you can't just speak about, I don't think you can speak generally about Pacifica because Tonga and Samoa have got their own specific issues, as Fiji does. So they've all got to be looked at, right? How can we help each of those countries develop? Because in Tonga now, like one of the huge threats in Tonga, Samoa, is NRL. And they're starting to invest more money in there. And apparently in Tonga now, most of the guys play half a year rugby league and half a year of rugby. Yeah, was the latest thing I heard. And you know, they're actively trying to encourage those countries to be proper rugby league countries. You know, they've created what I can't remember the name they call it, Pacific Championship, where they have
Yeah.
Tonga Samoa playing against New Zealand and Fiji. So you know that's a threat to rugby in those countries, mate. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, it's not as though rugby's going to fall over, but they keep eating away, mate. And you know, as Ewan said, if kids see NRL as attractive, then they'll make that decision, jump to rugby league.
Mm. What's
Thoughts,
your thoughts,
Mr.
Phil?
Atero? Oh,
Oh, for
yeah.
me?
So for me
Mm.
personally, you know, Masi, I love rugby league. Let's pause that real quick. Can you still hear the music?
Nope, all good, all good.
Okay.
You can only hear
I
you.
mean, for me, I love rugby league. You know,
Mhm,
going playing rugby league in Tonga and playing on the national team and the opportunities there. I was watching Mate Tonga when hardly anyone was watching Mate Tonga in the World Cup, and you know we did decent, but we would never do well. Um, I think right now the economic opportunity in the NRL is too much of a pool. If Tonga were to turn its energy to the NRL, I think what Eddie Jones is saying will be a reality. Is
mm,
we're not saying that rugby union's going to fall off the map. No, it's pretty entrenched, but the attraction to the top talent is going to have an impact, and that's in Samoa. In Fiji, it'll be a little bit harder, but Samoa and Tonga, you take the top talents from Samoa and Tonga, and in New Zealand and Australia, because those communities are tight, right? Matema Tonga doing well, Toa Samoa, it pulls that talent towards the NRL. The NRL's getting the eyeballs. It's on the international stage. You can't say there's anything close in rugby union for Tonga and Samoa like the Pacific Championship that rugby league is bringing to the table, right?
mm,
It's getting the numbers, it's getting the financial backing because the viewers are watching it. Granted, is it huge like the American market or anything? No, but it's economically viable. That's really what it comes down to. And the challenge that rugby union has is what is an economically viable competition for rugby union? I've never seen one. They're always changing it. They're always just trying to stay afloat. But I think Eddie Jones is spot on. If rugby union doesn't figure something out, the top talent will leave, and you never know where the next global superstar is going to come from. And the last few ones we've seen, and the biggest one of all time, happens to be Polynesian. So
mhm.
you know, World Rugby is going to have to figure something out.
Yeah. No, because it's interesting because they brought up. I don't know if you heard though, but you know that Super Rugby team Wana Pacifica,
Yeah,
they've
it's
announced that they're gonna go downhill. So the question he was asking Jones was like a business model or something that they owe to the Pacific, and then he kind of mentioned, this is a bigger problem. He's kind of making a bigger problem with rugby that world rugby that to me it's just regarding that question that Palangi guy um, kind of put forth to Jones, Eddie Jones. I don't think rugby owes anything to the Pacific. It's more of their model of how they do anything. Because if you create a team, it would prosper. The problem with Moana Pacifica is who would want to join a team when it's just another feeder team to the All Blacks? How is that seeing you're helping Tonga or
Mhm.
Samoa? They're not. You're that's just another feeder group, and New Zealand. If they die, New Zealand doesn't matter because whoever's the good players that are still on the Mona Pacifica, they're gonna go to other clubs. And there has been like some noise. Former All Black, Talima Sopuanga. You know that name?
I have that clip. You want to watch that clip?
Yeah, he provides something interesting. So whenever you got that up, very interesting points. But I think he even himself lacks the understanding of the problem. He was thinking that you can just grab somebody just to fund it, but successful people don't just keep throwing money at something that's dying and not feasible in the game. Because you can look at it other than the international games in rugby, that's the only time I feel like they're making money, but they only play those tests, what, 5 games, six games a
Mm.
year
Yeah, and I
of the
saw an
year. What are
interesting
Yeah.
stat. 99% of World Rugby's revenue just comes from the World Cup.
Yeah.
That's it. So all they got that's successful is the World Cup. Everything else loses money,
Yeah.
right? And so, and I agree with you, and we'll bring this up. But as always, we like to recognize our paying members. Shogun 1-0, appreciate it for being a paying member. He says, "You never miss the water till your well one runs dry." Lucky Dube.
Mm.
And
Mao
miss that
Shogun.
Malo Shogun, Lucky Dube. He is great in the reggae. Really sad to see how he left the world getting shot in his own hometown, picking up his kids from school. But that's the thing, and that's does union owe anything to the Pacific? No, but if they're smart, they will figure out a way to take care of the Pacific because of the talent that the Pacific provides across. I mean, I was watching Romania, and there's freaking Polynesians. There were Tongans on the Romanian team.
Mm.
I was like, dude, is there
Mm.
a country that Tongans or Polynesians are not on? Like, that's how important the Polynesian talent pool is to rugby union. And if they forget it, they will pay the price. So
Yeah.
let's.
No,
Oh, go ahead, Mushy.
no, you hit it on the nail to and this is the reason why World Rugby should care. The last real global rugby superstar is
Jonah.
Polynesian, Jonah Lomu. There's been
And
nobody even after
and
him,
he
not even
saved.
close.
This is not the first time rugby union has been in this situation. Rugby union was dying. The NRL, to me, is the most successful domestic competition in the world. It almost killed rugby union in the late 80s, early 90s, right?
Mm.
They were offering $1 million contracts to Willie O from the Wallabies, right? They offered him $1 million, but Willie O wanted to be loyal, just like Jonah Lomu was offered tens of millions of dollars to go to the Cowboys to try and be a tight end, but he wanted to be loyal to the
All
black
Blacks.
jersey. But let's put it this way: the Polynesian approach to loyalty and so forth. The Polynesians are now entering into understanding the market, and that loyalty is something that's good with the family and
Mm.
with the blood, and to a certain level for financial transactions, but within reason. Just like
Yeah.
Uncle Donald is showing, it's good to be good to other people, but you got to do it within reason. I can't pay for every meal. You gotta
Mm.
take care of a little bit here and there. But yeah, I mean, and Jonah Lomu saved rugby union. If he didn't come on board, apparently Rupert Murdoch, the media guy, it was
Yeah.
after he
Fox. He's
saw,
the owner of
yeah,
Fox. Yeah.
Fox, yeah, and a bunch of media in Australia and in England. After he saw Jonah Lomu, he was the one that threw the lifeline of
Mm.
signing TV deals with rugby union, World Rugby now that saved rugby union. You take that away, it's gonna be terrible for
Mm.
rugby union. So let's bring this up here. before we go on, let's bring on Shogun. He says, my Lucky Duper reference was pointing out how the Pacific has been neglected for years. Rugby union will regret if they lose us. No, 100%. 100% there, Shogun. Appreciate the support. Let's
Yeah,
see
great point.
what our brother Sopoanga here has to say. Sounds like you've already seen this one, Masi.
Yes, it's been kind of going around since the announcement.
No,
But
for
let's,
me, this is a
yeah.
Wrexham 2.0. This is Wrexham 2.0,
What's
but
Wrexham?
for the Pacific.
Do you know that?
I'm not sure what he means by that. If
Hmm.
any of our viewers know, then let us know. But we're not aware
Yeah.
of that word.
We need to ring Ryan Reynolds or anyone up there in Hollywood, and be like, hey, we've got something for you down here that can be all time on Netflix. Bring you sponsors that can do social media, because if you look at them, like Moana last year and through the years, their socials have been off the charts. Some other teams have better socials or have decided to have banter before the game. Like they have been, I believe, the lead horse in changing that. Don't forget, it's not just the players that affects. You know, you've got backroom staff, you've got staff who turn up to games and support them on, you know, weekend security, things like that, cleaners, also players' families, wives. Some people have recently moved to Auckland, or maybe some people have given up other jobs or other opportunities. So to hear that it's probably not going through next year will be pretty distressing for those families and pretty sad. So, you know, I can only empathise with those families and hope that, you know, somebody comes and saves the day, because, you know, not all hope is lost. That doesn't mean to say that somebody else cannot come in and take this license if they've got, you know, obviously deep pockets or structures around them to carry this forward. You lose this team, then where do the players go for rugby? Oh, yeah, well, what's the next big thing out there? It's NRL, it's rugby league. Okay, sweet, what pathways do I have? Oh, me, boom. Or if they are doing rugby, they're doing something similar to Theo McFarlane. Straight for Samoa, straight to Saracens, best club in the world. And if he wasn't in playing for Samoa, he would probably be wearing a white shirt for England, because he's probably, arguably, top 5 locks, loose forwards in the world. You know, if this is it for the team, and 2026 is all that they have left. Like, to the players, I hope you play your hearts out, and I hope you enjoy the time with your teammates, because rugby is a special game and it deserves to be enjoyed. On the flip side, fans, like, get out to the games, you know, buy some merch, you know, raise your voice on social media, ask for people to fix this. I'm not too sure, but all I know is that people of the Pacific are proud people and hardworking people, and I know that if we band together, we can do special things. And yeah, it is a bitter pill to swallow, and to watch and to sit and read stuff online. But yeah, I know the team will be hurting, but hopefully there's a miracle in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's right on one thing. On that, there, you need a miracle to save this one. You don't need a
Yeah. Looks like a casual observer joined us for a bit, but it looks like he jumped off. To me,
What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts on
this is
Sopoanga?
this is, I feel like, the model that he's proposing, which is kind of from learning from you, that the New Zealand Rugby Union and even Super Rugby, it's the socialist approach to sports, right? It's, hopefully someone just shows up with big pockets, you know, to do this and do that. Though I appreciate what he's saying about social media, but at the end of the day, aloha, casual observer. Welcome.
How's it going, gentlemen?
Doing good. At the end of the day, the club's got to figure out how to make money. It doesn't matter. Someone shows up with every deep pocket has a limit. Whether the bank account hits zero or the financial will of the backer just says, I'm tired of losing money. I'm tired of just losing money and so forth. They need to really rethink how to make
Yeah.
Super Rugby successful. That it's a structural issue that Moana Pacifica is just the first one to drop off because it's the poorest, right? It's the poorest when you're in a neighborhood that's struggling and there's a famine. The household with the fewest amount of resources is usually the one to perish first. And there needs to be a different thought process than just, oh, let's just bring someone with a big checkbook. Before I go to you guys for thoughts, want to stop Mel. Appreciate it.
Hey, follow
Appreciate it as
Mel.
a paying member. Mel, she says Malole to and Masi. Thank you for all your support, Mel. Thank you. Any thoughts?
Lee?
No, I just caught the tail. Was that Richie Mo'unga? No, it wasn't.
Sopoanga.
No, Sopoanga.
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 I just caught the tail end where, and I think Danny told me this. So last week or something, that Moana Pacifica is going under.
Yeah.
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 Looks like it.
This is their last season. They already announced this is their last season right now. Next year, there's no Moana Pacifica unless something happens. Yeah. No, because I was just thinking, because to me, it's why would somebody want to invest in the Moana Pacifica when no one really owns it? No one owns the Auckland
Yeah.
Blues. It's New Zealand rugby. Like there's I mean, he shares good sentiments and that's good, but the thing is there's some deeper issues that a lot of people that don't really understand how, I don't know if how money works, because even if somebody's a diehard rugby, but if they're gonna spend 10 million on a team, they're gonna expect some value back. It doesn't, either exposure to other markets or some returns on equity on the team. But people just don't throw money if they have 49%, but the 51 is controlled by New Zealand rugby, and they don't get a say on how things are going to be operated. So people, that's, to me, that's the real issue. And I don't know. I haven't heard much. It's unfortunate. Much Polynesians here on this side of the world talk about that. It's always talk about very surface level stuff on saying that, it's sad, or why are they not being supported enough by New Zealand rugby? But it's deeper than that. It's no one's gonna New Zealand rugby is gonna be it's gonna be fine without Moana Pacifica, and they just did it because they felt like they almost had
They
a
had no
knee-jerk
option.
reaction. They had
Yeah.
a knee-jerk reaction because the NRL's Mate Matonga and Tosamo was blowing up. They felt like they needed to do something to kind of try to capture. They thought it was a Polynesian wave of or revitalization of the sport, but that was just because Mate Maton and Thomas Samoa fans generally had understood they had a legitimate shot to win the whole thing. That's what drive the market and people coming in. It's not because Moana Pacifica is, I don't know. I mean, I've gone to a game. It's okay. I mean, it's nothing too great or anything. I mean, I know it's for a Polynesian team, but at the end of the day, I understood that Polynesian team was owned by New Zealand Rugby, and New Zealand Rugby gets the first dibs if there was good players to go play for the All Black, and then Samoa and Tonga gets the leftovers. That's
Yeah.
how I saw it. That's how I saw it, and I don't know if many fans view it that way that I did, because
So
if they did, they would
I
have understood that.
I just ran into a family here that just got back from New Zealand, and they were on the South Island because his wife is from Dunedin. And he said he couldn't believe how much stronger he sees rugby league on the South Island
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
above what above what it used to be, right? Because that used to be, I mean, that's all rugby union.
Dude.
Those people bleed rugby union there, and he said he couldn't believe how much energy and vibrancy there was around the rugby league community there, and he says he just can see and feel the
The
rugby
shift.
union just fading. Yeah.
Yeah. This is system. I did not realize New Zealand Rugby Union owns majority share in these franchises.
There's no really real owners. It's not like a real owner that owns like the Hurricanes, the
Yeah.
Auckland Blues,
And you
Highlands,
would, so
Chiefs.
after it kind of like generally what the agreement is you make your investment, and then you have to like reapply to NZRU to retain your
Dude.
ownership stake every like 5 years or something.
So it is socialist structure, because really that basically what they're showing right there is the same reason why
Yeah, you don't have final say. You don't have any control or final
no,
say.
yeah, there's the fundamental concept of freedom slash economic driver is private property and ownership over property. That's what drives it. That is what drives it. That's what a business entity is. It's an asset. It's a quote unquote individual. This is why when you go, I went to a reservation once, and I was having a conversation with someone on the reservation, and I noticed like everyone has a really nice car, but then they'll be living on a trailer on like a lot of land, right? It'll be a big piece of land, right? And then a trailer, and then there's heavy investment into the vehicle. And so I was talking with someone, and they were telling me, and I was asking, I was like, man, obviously there's cash flowing from somewhere. And he kind of talked about, oh, this tribe, each kid, kind of like how Donald Trump's trying to do those Trump funds or whatever.
Trump
Right?
accounts.
Trump accounts. Like some of these tribes, they have a similar thing for a kid. And when they hit 18, they get like this check, right? This check, and sometimes it could be a couple $100,000. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, but dude, couple $100,000 and you have this land, you could build a house. Why is it a And then they were saying, oh, that's because they can't own
They don't
the
own
land.
the land.
So there's no real incentive for them, because in theory they could invest all that money into the land, and then the land will be yanked from them. That is basically what New Zealand Rugby Union has set up. Is you can come in and pour in all this money, all this energy, and they can yank it from you at any moment. And therefore,
And you don't get to make any decisions, right? Because
exactly,
ultimately what you want is you want the team and the competition to be responsive to fans, be responsive to, I mean, it's an entertainment product.
Yes.
And
well, and just look at it. Their most valuable product, the All Blacks, is losing sponsorships. Even their greatest product, their most recognized asset, can't even be financially viable. And it's probably because it's a similar structure now that we're having this conversation. So how is it even possible for Moana Pacifica to survive? It's like, I'm starting to realize that Moana Pacifica had an expiration date on it from day one. Like the moment it was created, it was like, yeah, you're going to expire anytime.
Well, you're right. They did it because they saw what was happening with MMT, and they thought if they did something like that, they could fill a stadium. Because at the time, the only two teams that could fill stadiums in New Zealand was MMT and the All Blacks. Right? The Warriors weren't filling stadiums. Super Rugby teams weren't filling stadiums.
Warriors are filling out now. Warriors,
Yeah.
NRL is blowing up now.
Yeah, the strength of the NRL competition, they are Super Rugby is starting to actually nosedive, and the NRL is bigger, stronger, and more powerful than it's ever been. I think this past year they've had the best ratings that they've ever had. They've had the highest attendance numbers that they've ever had. So they're starting to leave Super Rugby in the dust.
To me, Super Rugby has always been in the dust, and I'm gonna find the video here. Here it is. Anything to add to that, Masi or Lee? Anything to add before I pull up this other one that talks about that a little bit?
No, I'm good.
Let's share this one. Yeah, let's bring this up here real quick.
Oh, this is Brent Impey. Yeah.
So I think this is kind of funny. He's talking about when South African teams left.
the killer blow is, and it's hardly ever been reported on, Martin, from 1995 right through to 2020, all of Super Rugby and SANZAAR negotiations and television had been in US dollars. In 2020, Supersport South Africa changed it to the rand, and in 1995, the New Zealand dollar was 3-1 for the rand. By 2020, was 12-1. The South Africans deliberately made it completely uneconomic. And had we gone ahead with that deal, New Zealand Rugby would have had to subsidise not only Australia and Argentina, which South Africa and us had done for years, and in a very free and open manner, to having to subsidise the lot. And we simply couldn't afford that. And it's been one of my, I think, criticisms of the media, Marty, is that the lack of business and economic analysis of these sort of issues.
Thoughts?
I mean, he is correct. There's a lot of detachment from the reality of the business and the economic drivers for these things, and obviously the United States does it better than anybody else on the planet, but these guys just can't wrap their head around exactly what goes into the ecosystem of a successful team, a pro competition. The NRL does it better. The AFL does it better. They still don't do it great, but they do it better. The European competition obviously is stronger. They have much larger markets. But when it the funny thing, when it comes down to, it's the same situation that you have in Iran. When it comes down to choosing between control and making the right decision, the economics or whatever, people will always choose control the majority of the time. So when the decision making came down to, we're going to have to either relinquish some control or we retain full control and allow the competition to sink lower economically, they've always said, we choose to keep control, even at the cost of the growth of rugby as a game. It's the same reason why rugby union struggles here in the United States, is because everybody understands the professional sports entertainment business so well here, they look at rugby union and just shake their head and they're like, these guys are not serious.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's going on. I kind of wonder what's happened to the Silver Lake investment in NZRU and the All Black brand.
Anything on that, Masi?
Trump's gonna own New Zealand. Just
No, I'm
you're
just
saying
gonna
like
pull up
another
some
Greenland,
comments.
like another Greenland.
He says this: Canada 51st and New Zealand 52nd state. I'm just pulling up some comments to pop up on what we discussed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, to me, what I found interesting is he had the audacity to say that New Zealand was subsidizing Argentina.
Well, they do. I mean, they do get, what kind of broadcast money is Argentina bringing to the table? Not a lot, right? So the broadcast revenue contributions to the contract that was funding Super Rugby.
But what I'm getting to is, when South Africa pulled out, New Zealand Rugby Union was burning and crashing. Like, that's the whole reason why. Like, that's why I don't give the Super Rugby a lot of credit for Moana Pacifica and the Fijian Trua. They had no option, because once it became very clear, the only thing that was keeping Super Rugby floating was not New Zealand, maybe Australia, but Australia was struggling against the NRL. Once South Africa pulled out, Super Rugby was on life support. It was literally on life support, and it still is up to this point. But this is I thought that was funny. It was like, oh, well, we had to subsidize Argentina. I was like, dude, right now, Argentina is probably going to, with how the Pumas have played, Argentina is probably going to subsidize the All Blacks here pretty soon if New Zealand Rugby Union doesn't figure out how to keep sponsors for the All Blacks, and they need to figure out how to get Super Rugby to be profitable.
Are the Jaguars still a team?
What you mean, the Pumas or Jaguars? What do you mean?
Well, the Pumas is the national team, right?
They don't
Yeah,
play in the Super Rugby competition.
Yeah. What happened to the Argentina Super Rugby team after
the Argentinian and the Japanese teams dropped out?
So they don't exist anymore.
They don't. It's Super Rugby Pacific now.
Since the
no, but they didn't stay with the South African. They didn't go compete in Europe, huh?
No, I think that was just a Super Rugby kind of deal. I don't think they went to Europe at all.
Yeah, because the Jaguars were in the same pool as the South Africans, right? The Jaguares is what they call them.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, Super Rugby to me, I don't know how you can say it's ever been super profitable. And now for me, from what Mussy said, structurally, it will never. It's going to be hard enough even if you give someone rights to outright own the asset. It's going to take work in that. But the fact that New Zealand Rugby Union is basically sitting there taking its cut, no real skin in the game, but it's going to get all that benefit for no skin in the game. No wonder why they'll never be profitable.
I mean,
in my opinion.
Yeah. All you get, right? If you for every investment dollar you were to put into a Super Rugby team, you get to sit in a quote unquote owner's box, and that's about it.
Yeah, and New Zealand's not a big enough market to say, oh yeah, well, you get your TV rights in New Zealand. That's what, 5 million people at best if you harness the entire market.
Yeah, about 5 million people.
So I got an update with the Super Rugby Jaguars team. So in 2019, it was confirmed that the Jaguars development team called Jaguars 15 would participate in the first division of the Currie Cup, South Africa's premier domestic competition. So it looks like they're participating in the South African conference.
The Currie Cup, are they still in there now?
Pandemic. So they say following the COVID-19 pandemic, the 2020 Currie Cup was delayed and the first division of the competition canceled, meaning the Jaguars 15 did not compete in 2020. For 2021, the Jaguars will compete in the Superliga Americana de Rugby, replacing Sebos as Argentina's franchise in the competition. In 23rd January, it was confirmed that the Ignacio Fernandez Lobe would coach the side in the 2021 Super Liga Americana de Rugby season. Fernandez Lobe had previously coached Sipos in the 2020 Superliga Americana de Rugby season. On 25th December 2022, Jaguars 15 divided to multiply the base of Argentina rugby and enhance regional competition as part of the transformations of the new Super Rugby Americas, which will replace the American Super League. The Argentina franchise was divided into Pampas from Buenos Aires and Dugos 15 from Cordoba, putting a definitive end to the Jaguars franchise. So looks like it's kind of broken up and made it to like a domestic team in Argentina, but that's kind of where it's at. And they participated in Super Rugby. Look like it's very briefly. Yeah.
It was just a couple of years. Wasn't really a long run. Let's go to a couple other quick videos here. This one I think Masi you'll like because you've shared your disgruntled relationship with the red card, right? and kind of
Yes.
give your take on that before I bring up this video, because Eddie Jones kind of discusses what he has as a solution for that. But kind of share
Oh,
your perspective on the red card and why you think it's bad for the game.
Well, I mean, you know, we kind of discussed it. The U.S. fans, if you're gonna make rugby kind of prosper in America, that red card, you're gonna just not impress an American general fan, because when you got 14 players playing against 15, that's already a turnoff for the rest of the game. So to me, if you're gonna take a player off, it's better to have immediate, and you gotta have unlimited substitution. I don't understand why rugby has this limit substitution for these things, but just allow unlimited substitution, and then allow a player to immediately just change that player, and if that player is not playing for the rest of the game, then have somebody go in. But to kind of get a red card, I mean, think about it. The rugby World Cup had South Africa win against New Zealand, with New Zealand playing majority of the game with only 14 men on the field. Like, and we're supposed to pay, and people paid tickets to go to, I don't know, was it held in Japan or France? I can't remember. Go hotels, parking, getting there, and then you watch a game that very
15 on
likely New
14.
Zealand,
Can you
15 on
imagine?
14 game.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine an NBA game 5 on 4 or an NFL game 10 on
At the
10 on
NBA
11?
finals, at the NBA finals or the
That's
Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah.
that is so ridiculous. It would be
NBA owners would be shutting down teams too, just like Moana Pacifica.
it's just crazy. Like college football, those guys, they definitely have you eject the player from the game. Right? Obviously he's one of your best players. If he's starting, that's punishment enough. But
Yeah.
don't make it so lopsided that it's completely ridiculous.
Mm.
Like I remember watching. Yeah, it's like What do you think the score would be in an NFL game if it was 10 on 11?
Yeah.
Right? What do you think the score is it in an NBA game if it's 5 on 4?
Yeah.
Right? It's so ridiculous. It's nobody would take a game seriously if the other side was one player down. Eject the player, get them immediately substituted,
Yeah.
something like that. But don't be. It's so silly. It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I they have to look at it as a product, and the viewer, the fan, has a tolerance as well. You need to minimize punishing the fan or the viewer,
Yeah,
right? That there's a tolerance. Like there comes a point where yes, you're punishing the team, but you need to make sure you don't go to the point that you're punishing the fan
yeah,
for the team's actions. And so that's what I really liked about when Masi brought that up is it's the same thing like New Zealand Rugby Union. Anybody in New Zealand Rugby Union, you're never going to get anywhere when you're just sitting there with your hand out saying, write the checks, right? I don't have any skin in the game. You're going to lose all your money, and then I'm just going to wait for the next guy to come and write checks. Like, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, you got to change that. It's the same thing here, like we're talking about with the red card and removing a player. This is the
but
same reason. Go ahead.
no, no, no. I'm just saying. You know how Silver Lake gave all that money to NZRU?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is how change is going to be forced on the competition. Is eventually, all that money comes with strings attached to it. When you start dealing with a bunch of these private equity firms and stuff and everything, they don't mess around. There's going to be it's the same thing that happened with
This is hilarious. We have to stop for this. That's pretty funny. T Jeff 13. I don't know if you guys know what he's referring to, but the WWE, the Samoan, the Usos, he knows well. Did I just stumble into the Bloodlines channel? I had to stop for that. Right? There are some comments that are that's hilarious. Sorry, go ahead, Lee.
You know that the firms that jumped in and invested in Southwest, and they forced Southwest. Now you have to pay for bags
Yeah,
Yeah.
on
assigned
Southwest
seating
and all those
now and
changes.
everything.
Yeah,
Hawaiian Airlines too, with the merging of Alaska Airlines, was that or
yeah.
no?
So
Okay.
though these changes, like these investment firms, are eventually going to force some changes. So yeah, U.S. Private equity firm Silver Lake has invested 262 million into the New Zealand rugby union commercial side, securing a roughly 7.5 stake in the entity that manages all the revenue generating assets for NZR.
What happened if the New Zealand government interjects? Because I know New Zealand rugby has been benefiting a lot for the New Zealand government. That's the reason why probably
Well,
they've
Socialism.
if
just
the
yeah.
yeah, if the New Zealand government were to interject, then essentially you would go sue any of the broadcasters who carry, Sky Sports over in England, whoever it is, and you would say, these guys owe me X amount of money, and
Mm.
whatever revenue stream, it'll be like they'll start garnishing the revenue, the broadcast revenue. So I don't think they're going to go there, because that would just be a terrible
Making a
idea.
bad situation worse.
Yeah, but the deal values, right? The deal values New Zealand rugby at approximately $3.5 billion.
Mm.
Yeah, I wouldn't throw a penny towards Super Rugby under that structure. Hey, Wada Bears. Wada Bears says Joe Exotic lost his zoo to debts, waiting for Jeff Lowe to come and save his zoo from being taken by Carol Baskin. I haven't I haven't heard Joe Exotic in a while. I don't know if you're serious or not, Wada Bears, but he also
Sorry,
says,
wrong group chat.
sorry, wrong group chat. Tukweloi Wada Bears. Vai ni potokiai. Maria, vai ni tacos. It's pretty funny. So yeah, let's bring up Eddie's
Eddie Jones.
his proposal.
About 56% of all yellow and red cards are for professional fouls and for persistent infringements. So that's a high percentage. So can you penalise a team by, when there's a professional foul or persistent infringement, which is a persistent infringement is a team foul. It's not an individual foul. And that's half of the 55%. So how can you penalise the team for that without taking a player off the field? So one of the things might be that the opposition could choose a player that goes off. For instance, I'm just coming up with some ideas.
That's
here.
a good idea.
So your persistent infringement goes.
Can you see like how almost uncomfortable the guy was?
Who's talking to him? Who's talking to him?
It's a podcast. It's a guy who's interviewing, so he's a podcaster. But this is the kind of stuff that cracks me up. The NRL has been, well, rugby league in general is focused on the viewer and the product. That's how rugby league has been from the very beginning. That's why they went professional first. The Coleman, the guy working in the mine, said, hey, if you want me to come to practice, you need to pay me. Yeah. Right? And the rich guys who have their fingers up their nose, well, you're going to take away from the spirit of the game while he's sitting on a couple $1 billion from his grandparents, right? Like it's the spirit of the game. So that's how the rugby league and rugby union start to separate. And you can just see there's a totally different perspective on how you approach. The level of creativity in rugby league has always been ahead. The TMO, the banana kicks, even the lines that are being run now, with the floating guy deep and the short ball, that's been in rugby league for 20 years. We were running things like that at the Mua Saints long time ago. And now I get sick and tired of seeing these rugby union videos. Look at how creative these lines are. And they're talking about like 2023. I was like, dude, I didn't even really understand how to play rugby league, and they were already doing that. That's how behind rugby unions. I'm cracking up because look at this guy's like body language when Eddie Jones kind of makes that statement. I'm trying to find where he kind of makes the comment, and then the guy just looks like he's uncomfortable.
The opposition can choose a player that goes off. For instance, I'm just coming up with some
Look at how
ideas.
That's a good
uncomfortable he
idea.
looks.
So you
Yeah, he says it's a good idea, but he's like nervous over there. That's to me is a
Wait,
sign of how uncomfortable these guys are with innovation and creativity.
did Eddie Jones just say that the opposition gets to choose?
Which player? Because it's a team offense. Like if it's not one single player, right? Like let's say you get 4 different guys conceding the same one. He's saying
Yeah.
rather than picking the last guy who made
Committed
the
the
offense
offense.
and sending him off, he's gonna say, no, you pause. Look at how uncomfortable. He cracked me up. The captain, you call up the captain, and the captain goes, I want that guy because it's a team offense, right? It's not an individual one. But yeah, so that's what he's saying. Sorry, I just think it's hilarious because that's a good idea, but he looks so uncomfortable, and it looks like he's like, oh my gosh, he's like so nervous.
position infringement goes to the captain. Right, we've given them a warning. They're still infringing. Which player would you like to go off the field? So he says, right, DuPont off. So DuPont goes off. Seren comes on for 10 minutes. Like something like that may help the game retain its integrity, because that game lacked integrity, mate. It lacked everything we like about rugby.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, so he says you choose the player that goes off, but someone comes back on, so it stays 15-15.
Yes.
I'd be interested.
Or
It'd
a
be
yellow
interesting
card.
to see who they convene and come down with, right? Because it's almost like the person who gets sent off as with a little bit of swag, right? Like I've been identified as the best player on my team. It's
Yeah.
almost like a
biggest
nod
threat.
of it's almost like a nod of who the MVP is on the other side.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, and I was just gonna say why this is important because, with the whole taking a player off, and because I can only think of one major sport is hockey. You know how they get the yellow and then they got the power play, we get the thing. But see, in hockey, compared hockey is like the last of the major sports. You know what's number one? The NFL. They don't do that. Number two, NBA. They don't do that. Three is baseball. They don't do that. Hockey, it's kind of like the fourth one, and they're still a major sport, but it's not even the gap between hockey and baseball and the other three is huge. But they have that
Yeah.
rule of sending the player out. So if you want to be number four, okay, you keep that rule. You know, to me,
Hey,
what hockey really makes a difference is I think people like it because of the fighting. It's one
hey,
of the few
Mm.
Munchie.
sports you can fight. You know.
No, that's actually one of the. Why don't we bring that rule into rugby? As long as the two guys are on their feet and static, like until you don't, the refs don't step in until someone goes to the ground. That would
Yeah.
be that would be interesting.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, with it's not attractive to really kind of make your sport grow and dominate, and then then you try to, and then Lee brought it up, with the whole it's popular amongst high schools playing rugby, and it's so fun, and rugby says, oh, it's such a growing sport in the U.S., and then you find out when they get to university, only a few that've gone to play rugby university, but that's the minority. You find all of them playing college football and try to go to the NFL because economically, and they know the prosperity is with the other sports, and that's why rugby needs. There's a lot of changing there, and there's a lot of and in order to make those changes to make it attractive, there's a lot of changing of the game that needs to happen, and that's part of it. It
And
yeah.
but what these guys also don't understand is the ecosystem around the game isn't good, isn't strong.
Mm,
Um, I mean, they have like a decent high school competition. They have a pretty much non-existent collegiate competition. Have you guys ever played a rugby union video game?
No,
No,
rugby league only. I've seen the Jonah Lomu rugby, but I haven't played. I
never.
played the
Yeah,
rugby
same.
league one once.
Yeah. How guess it Madden football and NBA 2K. NBA is a little, everybody plays basketball. There's a lot of people that play basketball in New Zealand and Australia.
I played a
But
hockey game and a baseball game.
y- yeah. No, but what I'm saying is that like
Yeah.
Madden football has been the number one game sold in New Zealand and Australia and is always in the top 10 for sure. Top 10 video games sold in New Zealand and Australia. So I'm talking about the subculture that exists in around the game. The leadership of rugby union, both in New Zealand and Australia, do not foster that. Even the NRL was kind of taking more of a direct role in the development of the NRL video game
Mm,
because they understand that that's pretty important, right? So there's the subcultures, the periphery cultures to the game and everything. Um, the lack of understanding of how those connect to following the game as well. They've made these really pathetic attempts at fantasy, like fantasy football,
Mhm.
those kinds of
yeah.
things. Because if a person plays fantasy football, they will consume 40% more content than if they didn't play fantasy football. So it's a massive jump in content consumption. And what that also did is that it makes every team nationally relevant, right? Because if and now just because if your team is like in Tampa or in Arizona or in Indianapolis, right? Those used to be just irrelevant regional markets that nobody cared about. But once fantasy football came in, the NFL went full in on embracing fantasy football because now if your receiver is with Tampa and you live in Seattle, you're interested in what goes on in Tampa. So it drives content on a national level rather than just on a regional basis. So some of these small things and stuff that I mean, if you ask anybody at NZRU, have you even spent 20 seconds, during your time and position of where you are thinking about these things? The answer is no. Thinking about them, and then the ones who do spend 20 seconds thinking about them, you actually ask, well, do you know how to act on them or how to implement? That's another bridge that those guys aren't even remotely close to crossing. And so the depth of knowledge, if you want to talk about the history of rugby union and who played who in 1975 and whatever game or whatever, those guys are great at that. But if you say, tell me the platforms that 12-year-olds are currently consuming most of their content on, those guys are clueless, right? They have no idea what the future fan is doing, a bunch of those things. So yeah, as you see the growth, I mean, the NFL was gaining millions of fans across New Zealand and Australia without even spending a single dollar there. Why? Because they knew the content and the platforms that a bunch of these young kids were consuming their content on, and they made sure that they made that content. They built content that was appealing to that demographic. Those guys never did it. You're talking like 15, 20 years ago. These guys are so slow to the table, and then when they get to the table, they don't know if they find out that there's chopsticks at the table, and they're trying to eat with a spoon or something. You know what I mean? They
Mm,
just they're so unprepared.
Well, and the thing is, right now, from our discussion here today, they can't even afford a table. There's no way they'll get to a table because it's like freaking socialism. If NZRU is gonna have that stake, it's
Well,
not gonna get anywhere.
well, here, let's okay. There this is kind of a weird thing to say, but there is space for socialism at the table. In a way, the NFL is a socialized, right? It doesn't matter. the broadcast revenue gets split 32 ways no matter who you are, whether you're the Jaguars out of Jacksonville, tiny market, Arizona Cardinals, whether you're the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, they actually have a Dallas Cowboy rule for broadcasting where only X amount of Dallas Cowboy games are allowed to be broadcast nationally. And that's because every if every broadcaster could broadcast nationally the Dallas Cowboy games, they would, because those are always the number one viewership. Well, the NFL content as a whole, anyway. But there are a lot of socialistic things about the NFL to give everybody kind of generally an equal share of the pie, even the way that they split ticket sales and everything.
No, that's not the foundation. The foundation is
Yeah, is
private
performance and
ownership.
merit. Yeah,
Well, first off, before you even get there, private ownership. That
yes,
comes down to it. It's not Roger Goodell gets 51% of every team and he just sits there and collects. It's like, no, each owner owns a team or group of owners owns a team, and their best interests are brought to the table. And because everyone's fighting for their best interest, deals are struck like the one that you're talking about, right?
yeah.
That's why you have
But ownership is key.
salary caps.
100%.
Yes, salary caps. Those are instituted so because you just don't want the Dallas Cowboys, the most valued brand, the biggest market, to just outspend you. Those are frameworks that you can work on. But they at least start with a free market, free enterprise type of foundation.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying, like, we can talk of like all those layers on top, but until NZRU
But
understands
the foundation is a market-based,
based,
ownership-based system.
yeah. Before we go to the last video, want to thank UTOL official, a paying member, for contributing and supporting the channel. He says Malo
Malo
Kautama,
UTOL.
and he says Jonah Lomu made rugby big and popular. 100%. You know, that's why the Polynesian talent pool market is absolutely critical for world rugby.
Yeah, and that's crazy because Jonah Lomu was treated the worst in New Zealand. He was treated well everywhere else. Here they are. They have the first global star of rugby union, and they just blew it because they were afraid of him.
Yeah, because they were structured. It was, and we've talked about this a bit, Mussy, and kind of share your kind of things we've shared here is they're so afraid of the individual because of this socialistic control, right? It's the same reason why they treated Jonah Lomu that way. It was because, oh, the all black brand,
They were afraid.
NZRU, that has to be the centerpiece. But kind of what we've discussed, Mussy, is remember what we discussed, what made Moana Pacifica so popular? It was already Savea. That's really what it boiled down to. And yet New Zealand Rugby Union hammered him for years. Why you do so much social media? Why are you doing all these podcasts and all these things and content creation? Because that's what will drive that interaction, that commitment. It's that when a fan feels directly associated with a player, they will pay to go to the games. They will pay to buy the merch. They will spend those dollars, sometimes even dollars they don't have. They will spend it because of the players. But we've kind of talked about that a bit. Anything you want to add on that, Mr. Atero, before we close with this very sad and depressing video from the CEO of World Rugby?
No, no, and you know, it was just rugby. Jonah Lomu was the biggest, and Jonah Lomu was just a typical Polynesian kid that was doing what he was told, and he just went with it. And you know, it was kind of unfortunate because he could have used a lot of leverage to even make the game even better, and he even changed it. Like we're talking about like change. Like Jonah Lomu should be making royalties on the Lomu name on the All Blacks jersey till today. And to me, it's the reason NRL is still probably lacking in this area. When you highlight a person and you put name, because that is your own brand. NFL has proved it. You sell a lot of your merchandise. that way. If they kind of focus on the Artisa Vea, more of a Taumalolo having like I think the international test they allow that, which is good, and that's why that NRL is really just trying to catch up with the times, but rugby is still lacking behind. And John Olomu, he didn't understand. He was the big fish. He just didn't know what he was. They
And he
say
was the
it's
first fish, right? It was
he was the
uncharted
first.
territory.
Yeah, and they always say what's most valuable to a person or to an organization is you got to know who you are and what you are. And John Olomu didn't know those two important things, because if he did, he would have made the big change he already was with the super. He could have been bigger than that if he knew who he was and what he was to the game of rugby as a whole.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
And New
He just
Zealand
saw he
Rugby
just saw New
Union,
Zealand. Yeah.
yes. And New
It's
Zealand
all
Rugby Union could have been in a totally different financial position if they knew how to capitalize on
yes.
Jonah Lomu, but they
Well, they
Yes.
they
they
tried to
couldn't.
suppress him. They tried to. They were afraid that he was going to get bigger than NZRU or any of that stuff, right? The NBA did the complete opposite. They said we need a superstar, and they consciously said, "What we're going to make? We're going to make Michael Jordan a household name. We're going to
Mm.
find the brightest, you know, at, great young athlete talent that we have, and we're gonna make him a global brand," and they did. And they had rugby union had the opportunity to do that with Jonah Lomu, and rugby union, instead of embracing the opportunity that was in front of it, actually squashed it.
Yeah. And look at the difference, right? You had the NBA make a conscious decision to build up a player to get to the legendary status that it was. This is the type of resourcefulness we're talking about from the free market. Then you had the socialism of NZRU. The superstar just happened in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they still couldn't figure out what to do with it. Right? That's why I love this one show. They're talking about Kaizen and the Japanese culture, and they came to these two guys. One guy had like a sushi restaurant, and he was known for having the best rice in the world, and like he sourced it from this other Japanese guy who had the connections to the best farmers in Japan, who could produce the best quality. And the guy who's interviewing, it's the two of them sitting there, and the interviewer goes, if I paid you 3 times the amount that the sushi guy, the owner, right? The sushi guy who's buying your rice, would you sell me your rice? And the Japanese guy goes, no, I would never do that. And I was thinking like he was going to say because of loyalty, because of all these things that, like relationship, long term, which are all great answers. But it was a fascinating answer because he goes, because you wouldn't know what to do with the rice, right? Meaning I could give you the best product in the world, but if you don't know how to leverage the best product in the world, what's the point of selling you the best product in the world? And that's the same thing with NZRU. They had the best product in the world, but it was in many ways useless. It was a one-time event because they didn't know the value that was in front of them. Like Masi said, you don't know who you are and what you are. They couldn't capitalize on that.
It's kind of it's the same thing when Disney acquired the Marvel characters and content, right? And when the price that Disney paid, I think they paid like $4 billion for it.
For what characters? Like Mickey Mouse and
No, for the
No,
Marvel
the
universe.
Marvel. So the whole
the
superhero.
Marvel, the whole
Yeah, they paid $4
Superman.
billion. They paid $4 billion for it,
Wow,
and everyone was saying, "Oh my goodness, you're
that's crazy.
crazy." Like it's not even worth 25% of that and everything. And how much does like one Marvel movie make under Disney? It just like and that's where if you have great story content in the hands of great storytellers, um, it goes through the roof. And so how much has Disney made from
Marvel.
$30 billion, right?
Who's the
From
dummy
one,
now?
yeah. So from just the Marvel universe, after paying what everyone said was a ridiculous, right? It's like the sushi in the right hands. Like that guy would have had it and it would have just been like another thing of rice. Marvel in Disney's hands is worth $30 billion, and the people who put that deal together knew exactly what they were doing. And rugby union is an. I love rugby union. I have not watched any of the
You've
last.
played rugby union, yeah.
Yeah, I played rugby. I haven't watched any rugby World Cup in the last 15 years, maybe even 20 years. Why? Because 50 to 100 of the best players in the world are not playing in that World Cup.
Mm.
And I know the reason why they're not playing is because of stupid rules and
Rules.
regulations
Eligibility.
put in
That's
by,
dumb.
yeah, it's all political reasons. Right? If world rugby were in American hands, they're going to say, what do we need to do to make sure that our best athletes are on the field delivering the best product? Right? They're not saying, well, how do we keep this Tongan out of the competition, or
Mm.
that Samoan, or that Fijian, or whatever it is. It's they're I just don't want to watch a half baked product put on by second rate guys because of some political reason why the best player couldn't be on the field. You know,
Yeah.
and
No, 100%. Yeah, and they think this is what I think is hilarious. And then we'll go to closing content. We won't watch the last video because we're coming up on the 2-hour mark here. But they think they're punishing the player, right? They think they're punishing the player, which they are. But when they punish the player, they're punishing the viewer. And then the viewer turns around and punishes New Zealand Rugby Union
Mhm.
or World Rugby or whatever. That's why I always crack up when they're like, if we can, that's what the video was going to say. If we can get 1% of the US market, I was like, dude, get over it. That's the same old idea I've heard. How about go fix the structural problems before you come and ask and say, if we just put lipstick on the pig, it's going to fly and people are going to love it. Lipstick on the pig, it's still a pig. But with that being said, closing comments, casual observer, then Mr. Atearoa, and we'll close it out.
I hope that eventually, what is it? Necessity is the mother of innovation. So, oh, who's this? I was raised in Cali in the 80s
Yeah.
and 90s, grew up on American football, and I only knew rugby through Lomu. See, this is exactly what we're
Commercials.
talking about. Lomu and the
Yep.
Jets were my introduction to talking celebrities who are now legends. You know, what a missed opportunity, because by name, John Alomu had, people knew John Alomu and they didn't know what rugby union was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they just completely blew
Fumbled
it.
it.
But I think that I don't understand why World Rugby just does, what they did to the Las Vegas Sevens, taking them to LA. And that's the kind of those are the kinds of moves that are lacking in intelligence, that constantly demonstrate to people who played rugby here, like Mark Cuban, right? Who has been approached multiple times, being a rugby player over at Indiana, attending Indiana rugby games. He's been approached many times to invest in rugby, professional rugby, all of that stuff. This guy owned the Mavericks, right? He takes a look at it, and in 5 seconds, he's like, these guys even serious about being a professional competition? Can you imagine those conversations where I when talking to NZRU in the past, I said, you guys do professional sports entertainment as well as we play rugby here. in the United States, right? And we don't
Hmm.
play rugby very well. So and it is it a potential? I mean that is correct. Do I believe that rugby union could get 1% of the U.S. market? Absolutely, it could. But you have to build it around what the U.S. investor is looking for, and the U.S. investor is interested in what the U.S. fan is interested in,
Mm.
right? So if you bring a product here to the U.S. that nobody wants, who's going to invest in helping you get that product here to nobody who wants it?
Mm.
But if you're able to make adjustments and changes and develop 1% of the population here that is interested in rugby union, then you will get a bunch of investors that will come here. But when you refuse to change, you refuse to. Here, I remember when the NFL changed the rules. Now the rules are different on hitting the quarterback. Why are the
Yep.
rules different for hitting the quarter? Right, you can't hit him below the knee. You can't slam him to the ground. You can't fall on top of him. Why? Because when Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, um, the Payton, the Manning brothers, all of those guys. Guess what happens to television ratings when those guys don't play? They drop like 25%. So what you want to do is you want to keep your key player upright and on the field. Because why? You're a sports entertainment product and people want to see the best players play. So I mean those are some of the yes, some people say the game's getting soft, all of that stuff. Those are things that do have to get into consideration. But when the fans,
And the
25% of the fans say we're going to walk away unless I get to see Tom Brady play or Aaron Rodgers play or Ben Roethlisberger play or whoever it is play, then you make sure those guys are on the field playing.
mm.
And rugby union needs to sort that out. The pro competition here is fading. They usually say in the startup market that at your 5-year mark you are who you are. And rugby, the Major League Rugby has reached its 5-year birthday when last year or the year before, and people are
Utah
looking at
Warriors
it.
dropped.
Yeah, people are looking at it
COVID.
and be like, at the 5-year mark, you can tell what a company is. This is what the company is, and it's just not there. And
Yeah. The only way you can revive it is you have to sell it at a severely discounted price to even get someone interested, if you could get them interested.
Mm.
hmm.
Mm. All right.
So, well, those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts.
Nice.
Malo, Mr.
No,
Aotearoa.
well, I was gonna say because those rule changes are fine with the hitting the quarterback and stuff and the helmet to helmet, but I would still watch. It's getting a little ridiculous with the kickoff. I've kind of stopped watching NFL as much. The kickoff has kind of turned me off. So there's been too much changing to me, and but apparently looks like people are still watching the NFL. To me, that's why it's kind of turned me into a more of a college football fan because it is the football that I remember it is, and I know that you can always tweak it to try to keep player safety and stuff. But when you change like an entire kickoff of what's going to be in to me what I find it fascinating and the kickoff return that's always it's a blood rush when you see somebody return a kickoff to the touchdown. I don't think it's interesting. I'm curious to figure out the numbers. There's probably been less
Mm.
return kickoffs for a touchdown
At
since they
that
made
point,
that rule
why have a
change.
kickoff? Just go
Why have
straight
a
to
kickoff? Just
possession.
go yeah. So just little rules like that, and and to me as the NFL can always change back the rules that rule. And I know I'm probably in Donald Trump's team. He's been advocating the NFL to. That's such a terrible kickoff. He always mentions it, and he always says that's why he's a college football fan. That's kind of more like where I stand. And to me, if people still they'll change it when the people are not watching or not buying or something. But it looks like the NFL viewers are still watching it with that new kickoff. But until then, I watch college football as my kind of main sport that I kind of follow. So my thoughts are Juana Pacifica. It's not anything that they need to make you survive or anything. It's the whole model of rugby in general, the way it's
Mm.
run, the ownership. And I think you, Lee and Casual Observer and Tua, you guys hit it on the nail. if a owner doesn't have ownership on the team, why invest to it? If is it Mark Cuban? He's a billionaire and he played rugby. He's not even interested. Maybe they approached Mark Cuban to buy it because they thought he was more Democrat enough to get it because he believed in
He's
the
only Democrat
socialism.
in politics. His business acumen and
Yeah,
approach is
yeah,
very conservative.
very conservative, but Democrat in other areas. So maybe that's why they
Uh,
approach. But even Mark Cuban, a person who actually played rugby, he hasn't even come close to his nose to care about rugby where it's going. He's just there, just a fan. If it lives, he'll watch. If it dies, he could care less. He'll move on, kind of thing. So that's kind of where rugby's at. I If rugby doesn't improve, people will, NRL has the best to benefit from. So, hopefully things will change. But sometimes people don't change until they're dead, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's another interesting point, right? Like where you had those kind of big excursions of rugby union here into the U.S. The NRL has consistently applied investment into the U.S. In Las Vegas, and
Yeah,
right now
consistently. Yeah,
consistently, and now they've said that Las Vegas is going to be a permanent uh,
opening season.
opening, a season opener for them, and attendance continues to rise. Uh, Rugby union has no methodical approach, right? It's been here forever. It's been in the colleges forever. It's been in a number of high schools for a long time, and they just can't get traction because the leadership is so bad
yeah.
and the model is so bad.
Mm.
Yep. And yeah, for me, closing thoughts first to all of our brothers and sisters in Aotearoa. There's no such thing as a rich country with low energy. Really got to
Mm.
figure that piece out, and
Mm.
Wait,
that's
who has low
something that
energy?
huh
Who has low energy?
no energy, like no
Power,
energy access to energy. there's
Okay.
there's
electricity.
there's
Yeah,
no wealthy country that has low energy production, low energy whatever. Everything begins with energy. New Zealand has been making decisions that have put them at risk
companies have been failing and shut
yeah,
down because of
like
expensive
Waddy's is
power.
shutting down all their production in New Zealand.
What?
Yeah,
Well,
all their
the
manufacturing.
their South Island. Maybe I don't know if they have a
No,
North
they said
Island.
Auckland.
Oh,
They
okay.
said their
That's
Auckland plant,
unfortunate.
their Christchurch and Dunedin plants
That's
are all shutting
unfortunate.
down. 300% increase in energy.
Mm.
So that's
Mm.
that's something that, as we mentioned, we've had um, Honorable Minister Shane Jones on the call. I think the
Yep.
Polynesianized podcast are big fans, big supporters of New Zealand First. So we're not saying to tell you how to vote, but we're saying, hey, maybe it's worthwhile to give Uncle Peters and Jones at least a listen
If you
and
want
keep that
cheap
in mind.
electricity, yes. You want cheap
Yes,
electricity, give them a shot, man. Because no
give
one
them
else
a
is talking
shot.
Wow.
about it.
And
Yeah.
then for rugby, I love rugby. I think it's a great sport,
Mm.
but there are fundamental and structural issues that need to be addressed. And putting lipstick on a pig is still a pig, right? To make it more attractive, kill the pig and make bacon.
Mm.
You gotta
Mm.
kill the old
Everybody wants
system.
some bacon, right?
Everybody wants bacon. And then I just want to say thank you to all the viewers and supporters. I
Yes.
think, have we hit 1 million views yet? I can't remember the last time I checked.
I don't think so. I think we're still shy from it, but we're
We're
getting there
still
just on
shy. We're
YouTube.
getting closer. We're getting closer.
So thank you
Um,
everyone for consuming the
yes.
Polynesianized podcast content. Malo Alpito, and keep going because we are still going. We enjoy doing this. So yeah, awesome.
Yep. With that being said, we'll leave you all with what we always say, right? Be bold. Don't be afraid
Mm.
to ask the hard questions, but always, always stay curious. Till next time. Peace.
Peace.